Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from our IOSH members around the world. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join a session on mindfulness today with a very special guest star, Claudio, who is a mindfulness coach and has a role in a global corporation within which I work, taking care of mental well-being. My name is Tracy Ruffett. I'm a chartered member of IOSH, and I am on the IOSH Financial Services Group committee. And I have the pleasure of hosting the session today on behalf of the Financial Services Group. So what would you like to do today is explain what mindfulness is and explore further how to put mindfulness to work using the 7 pillars of mindfulness. We will do some short guided meditation with Claudio as well, so we can apply the theory into practice. There will be an opportunity for you to ask Claudio any questions you may have after the guided meditation. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand during the Q&A session or type the questions in the chat box as we go along, and we will pick them up with Claudio later on. So getting to know Claudio. Claudio, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today. Please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It is a pleasure for me as well to be here. So like you said, I've been working in a global corporation for almost 20 years now, and I've covered several roles in sales and other functions in the company. I currently hold a position as Vice President of Global Academic Relations in our corporation. It means essentially public affairs towards the scientific community. I hold a degree in physics. I have an MBA. And I recently got a master's in contemplative neuroscience. Essentially, what does happen to the brain when it is in a contemplative state, just like meditation, which we're going to be talking about today. I have a very strong interest in mental well-being, especially in complex organizations where stress seems to be a pillar of what we do daily. I'm a trained mental coach and a mindfulness coach, and I teach mindfulness to corporations and business schools.
That's great, thank you. So let's look at what is mindfulness. I would like to know how many of you already practice mindfulness in one way or another. Please answer the poll question, which has just been launched. So while we wait for the answers, let's move on. Could you tell us what is mindfulness? What are the benefits and how did you discover it, Claudio, please?
Sure. There's a slide that can be put up, which has a definition of mindfulness. The formal definition, if you look up in a dictionary, is going to be something like paying attention in the present moment on purpose and with the quality of non-judgment, so non-judgmentally. This is the definition that was, there you go. This is a definition that was put together by John Kabat-Zinn in the 70s, so quite some time ago. He's the scientist who first took mindfulness out of the Buddhist contemplative tradition into science and medical practice. In other words, mindfulness is all about training our minds to be aware of what's in our mind in this very moment without getting carried away by it. Now, this is very important. Despite the link to Buddhism, mindfulness is totally non-religious. It is a secular practice and is very much backed up by almost half a century of science and research. If you look up the scientific papers that are being published nowadays or in the last 30 or 50 years, you'll see an exponential growth of papers in the fields of psychology, neuroscience, sociology that relate to mindfulness. Now, what's very important, and Ben, if you could go to the next slide, mindfulness is not a quick fix for for instance, there you go, or a relaxing technique to use when in need. There's a lot of techniques out there to relax when you're in need. Mindfulness is rather a practice. Yes, it's true, you feel better and more relaxed, but that's rather a side effect of the practice. So like I said, mindfulness is like going to the gym to train our mental muscles and cultivate mental qualities such as attention, awareness, and focus. These are three of the main qualities you actually train. In other words, mindfulness is the practice with which you train your emotional intelligence muscles, right? It helps getting our minds off autopilots, for instance, habit loops or negative habit loops. In the corporate environments, the imposter syndrome, for instance, or not feeling adequate for the task or the work that we do, or simply feeling stressed for several reasons. Now, research shows that such qualities are not just nice to haves or things that you develop qualitatively. There's actually a measurable chance, or you can actually measure how these qualities are improving. For instance, stress reduction, anxiety, the way you manage anxiety and happiness. On a personal note, I discovered mindfulness on a quite difficult time of my life and career. I was studying for my MBA. And at that time, I worked in a corporation. I had just been promoted to manage a highly performing sales team of 12 people. And back then, I was very happy to have gotten that position, but I brushed a burnout. And I brushed taking very poor decisions in my life and career. Now, at that time, mindfulness really helped me to accept what was going on. Yes, it was tough, but I learned to accept it without beating myself up. I learned to be present and make friends with my positive and negative emotions. And back then, the negative emotions were way more than the happy ones.
Thank you. Ben, are we able to show the results of the poll now, please? Right, so we have 54% have never done it, 34% a little, and 12% regularly. I must admit, I hadn't done it until I did some sessions with you, Claudio, and they were really good, particularly during COVID crisis that we had.
Yeah.
So let's explore further how to put mindfulness to work. We hear a lot about the benefits of mindfulness, for example, how mindfulness can be a means to foster productivity and innovation at work. And from an employee perspective, it can help one to manage stress and enhance day-to-day well-being. You have also mentioned some benefits in your case, such as you noticed your communication skills improved as you became a better listener, which helped you to improve sales. So tell us about the 7 pillars of mindfulness and how they can be applied in the workplace, please.
Sure, Tracy. Actually, just a comment on the poll. It's quite, I get that percentages, almost every time I do a presentation, plus or minus, that's what it is. So if you've never practiced mindfulness, don't worry about it. Just follow the rest of the webinar. And then at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a little mindfulness practice, which is going to be guided. So don't worry too much about it, even if this sounds different from what you've heard in the past, especially in a corporate environment. This is going to make sense when we do the actual meditation at the end of this presentation, actually in about half an hour or so. So one of the questions I get the most is, how do you take a formal mindfulness practice from the meditation cushion, right? We all picture somebody sitting on a meditation cushion, or anyway, somebody who's, closed eyes and all peacefully placed there and just meditating on something. How do you take that, focus on silence? How do you take that into our daily life or work? Now, the answer is that sitting in silence is actually the training part, where we develop our mindfulness muscles. It's almost as if you jump into a gym and you ask those people, how the heck do you think you're going to run a marathon if you sit into this wonderful place with music and all this machinery? Well, that is the practice. The real world is out there. So the qualities or muscles that we train during a formal mindfulness practice, of which we're going to get a little bit of a taste in a little bit, are called the pillars of mindfulness. These are almost as the muscles you want to train as you walk in the gym. If you want to run a marathon, you want to train your leg muscles and your breathing. These are essentially what we train during mindfulness. And here they are. If you could go to the first slide, which mentioned non-judgment. That's it. Now, when meditating, one of the first qualities we learn is not to judge anything that enters in our meditative experience. You'll see it in a little bit, but when you sit calmly focused and focusing on your breathing, acknowledging what's happening, well, all of a sudden stuff intrudes. For instance, why am I sitting here? Or where have I left my keys? Or I'm going to have a very bad meeting in the afternoon. Am I prepared for it? All of that stuff. During a meditation, we learn to welcome it, but not add a judgment tag over it. You know, the load of preconceptions and judgment we usually put on top of these things. If you want to give an example on a business environment, for instance, taking a decision, we learn to observe, feel clearly, consider thoughts, consider bias and preconceptions, and then finally we act. So non-judgment does not mean by any means to take a passive attitude without taking action. So that's non-judgment. The next one is acceptance. That's so important, right? It's one of the qualities we train. And there is a slide for that. Oh, thank you. Now, I don't know if you know it, but there is a classic of management. It's often read in business environments, specifically for change management, which is called Our Iceberg is Melting. I don't know if you heard of it, but essentially the author thinks about how different personalities in a corporation react to a situation of change. And in the case of the book, there's a group of penguins that are given the dire news that their iceberg was melting, and everyone has to take a decision of what to do. And there's the person that says, "Oh, there's no way the iceberg is melting." There's the other penguin that says, "Let's run, let's go to the next iceberg." And then there's the other one who start doing all sorts of calculations to do the jump to the next iceberg, so on and so forth. Now, accepting does not mean giving up, not at all. On the contrary, with a clear mind, realize what the present conditions are and accept them. For instance, COVID, or the collapse of a market, or the sudden loss of orders for whatever reason. Now, from that base, we don't just stand still, but a base free from destructive emotions such as fear, anxiety, anger, well, more informed decisions can be made. The third one is the beginner's mind. Now, the best way to depict a beginner's mind is if you see a kid playing with a toy, right? Curiosity, wide-eyed wonder. She's there looking at this toy and trying to understand how it works. And that's really the beginner's mind. It does not mean in the business environment, obviously, to be frivolous or incapable of doing our work. Instead, it means being, like I said, curious and interested. Curiosity is the quality of mind that sustains attention and interest. If you're curious, you are interested. If you're curious, you are attentive. So it's quite important qualities to cultivate, and mindfulness helps with that. At work, this means, for instance, taking nothing for granted, noting with curiosity those nuances that we take for granted, or like the dynamics of a meeting, for example, or maybe you're sitting in front of an employee or a colleague who's in distress and you're not picking up the signals of that. And if you're a manager, this is quite important. Or maybe a signal from the market you're not seeing because you're not applying your beginner's mind. You've seen this over and over again. So it's very nice quality to have. Curiosity and interest awaken our ability to surprise ourselves. And if you're a people's manager, it's really contagious to others. It's a quality of leadership, I'd say. Next one is patience. Now, sitting in a mindfulness posture, in meditation, whether you had a wonderful day or a bad day, it takes a lot of patience, because not always, you're sitting in front of a setting sun, maybe, and maybe you're on vacation, and it's so easy to meditate. Well, most of the time it's not like that. So we learn to meditate in any conditions, when we're angry or anxious, for example, without acting our restlessness and with confidence. It is very difficult to do that, but it's something that can be trained. Now, I have to warn you on the idea of a blissful meditator, but that is a popularized image, and it's not a true one, or not all the time, at least. Paying attention to the present moment can be very hard at times, like I said, when your mind is agitated or stressed. Now, at work, we all have to face situations where restlessness and impatience can be harmful. Now, with a sustained mindfulness practice, we learn to recognize if we are participated by disturbed emotions, and sound a warning sign to ourselves that those disturbed emotions maybe impair our way to take decisions. Instead, we may take note of that and calmly dwell in patience, or take that decision maybe a little bit later or another time if disturbed or afflicted emotions are taking the stage at that moment. The last three are letting go, to let be. Letting go or let it be. Well, when we sit in meditation, what's normal, and you'll see it in a few minutes, thoughts and emotions come to haunt us. You sit there and you have all the intentions to have a wonderful meditative practice where you're sitting in a stable, comfortable position and your mind is very focused and very centered. Well, what happens, and trust me, you'll see it in a little bit, and those of you who are familiar with mindfulness know exactly what I'm talking about. You sit there with all good intentions, and all of a sudden you have all sorts of thoughts, from the smallest one, like, where have I put my keys, to maybe more difficult ones, because maybe you're going through some difficult time in your life, and those thoughts are popping up. During a meditation, we learn not to cling to them, at least for the duration of the meditation, and just letting them go. You see how difficult that can be. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example of in the business world, a classic pitfall at work, I don't know in your environment, but certainly it is in my environment, is micromanagement, right? That drive to want everything under control. It's that subtle fear that something is getting out of hand, and the difficulty of delegating that task. Now, letting go does not mean relying on chance or dropping responsibility altogether. It means not getting attached to our mental affliction. In the case of micromanagement, is most likely fear, or FOMO, fear of missing out, seeing those emotions clearly for what they are and choose consciously to letting them go. Or another way to say that is letting them exist, at least for the duration of the mindfulness, or at least for the moment you have to take that decision. I'll give you a very practical example. I am an anxious person when it comes to speaking in public. Right now, if I consciously or meditatively observe myself by taking a deep breath, I definitely noticed a little bit of the signals of anxiety, little butterflies in my stomach, a little tingly here and there. Well, what I choose to do is not to fight it and letting it go. There are my companions right now. I'm sitting here in front of you. Trust me, you don't see them, but right here, there's Mrs. Anxiety, and right here, there's Mr. Fear right next to me. The last two are grouped together, and they are self-discipline and effort. Now, meditation is a practice, like I said before, the gym example. And like any practice, it requires lots of self-discipline and effort. Now, sitting in meditation for a few minutes every day, as simple as it may sound, it's not easy. And I'm going to invite you at the end of this webinar to set some time on the side during your daily routine for a meditation. Now, when we're having a bad day, when we're rushing in the morning, or generally when we're busy or stressed, it's very difficult to do maybe even a minute meditation practice. The thing is that little by little, if we allow some space for meditation to grow, just like a little plant, little by little, we develop a very important quality, which is perseverance. Well, we know perseverance in the business environment, right? And we know perseverance if we go to the gym. We know that we're not going to get those abs of steel if there's no perseverance. We're not going to run that marathon if we don't have the motivation and the perseverance to go to the gym or to go running every day. In a corporate setting, unfortunately, discipline and effort are often associated with obsolete management styles, directive and regimented. Meditative spaces do the same in a more gentle and inclusive way. Right? You can be directive in a more gentle and inclusive way, which I think it's much more in line with a more modern management style. Tracy, I'm going to stop right here.
Okay, so thanks. It's great to hear about the 7 pillars of mindfulness and how they can be applied and help in the workplace in order to get there. What do we need to do? Do we need to start practicing or continue to do it? What is your recommendation in terms of best practice? I know in my case, I've signed up to Headspace. I do yoga twice a week, and there's a really nice kind of meditation piece at the end. But it is quite difficult, as you say, to find the space or get into a routine of actually doing it.
Yeah, I have 2 suggestions here. Because like I said, and I won't get tired repeating how much mindfulness is not a quick fix. And the reason why I'm repeating it all the time is because even when you get into a mindfulness practice, you'll tend to think it's a quick fix. Oh, I'm tired today. I'm just going to get home and meditate and I'm going to feel better. Expectation, that's what you get there. Judgment, that's what you're getting there, right? Remember, mindfulness is about, being in the present moment non-judgmentally, right? So even though, we may have all good intentions, the idea that mindfulness is a quick fix is always there. So what I can tell you is that once you have a stable practice, then you'll be able to apply several quick practices to find your center focus and relax and find your calm and motivation. So I have 2 suggestions. The first thing is set some time during your busy day to meditate. You'll see in a short while what does that mean. But reserve some time for that. Now, we all lead busy lives, and I always get that question. I don't have time. Well, a minute is even enough. And if you don't have a minute during your busy day, which sometimes, let's face it, it's true. We feel like that, right? Like we don't even have a minute. Well, you can always set your alarm clock a minute earlier, right? It won't destroy your daily routine, and you gain a minute to do a very quick mindfulness meditation. That's the first thing I can say. The second thing is that if you really don't have time to do a formal mindfulness meditation, meaning sitting on a cushion or sitting on a chair, like we're going to be trying in a few moments, well, you can always bring that attention, bring that quality of being present with whatever there is in action. So if you're in a meeting, even right now, I'm giving a presentation to a quite large audience of people. Well, I can, as I speak, take a moment and check in with myself. How am I feeling? How am I? What are the emotions that are stirring right now? I can choose consciously to, like I said before, let Mrs. Anxiety and Mr. Fear just sit next to me and not act them, even though I know they're there. As you sit on a mindfulness practice, and you know what I mean when we get to it, it's almost as if a few demons come up. They try their best to get you off that meditation chair or that meditation cushion. And these are sleepiness, excitement, and procrastination. What you'll feel is sometimes that you sit there with all good intentions and you feel sleepy. You simply try to focus on your breathing and you tend to drift away in a nice sleep. Well, if this happens, well, first of all, you can use it to fall asleep if you have problems falling asleep. But if your intention is to do a meditation practice, perhaps you can wake yourself up a little bit, maybe wash your face or activate your body before getting into the mindfulness practice. And if you still are sleepy, remember, we're trying to be kind to ourselves and non-judgmental to ourselves. And maybe today is the day when I'm tired and you can give up the meditation. The other thing that will happen, and I think most likely this is the one that is going to happen today, as we are right in the middle of our business day, is the obstacle of excitement. What happens is you sit on meditation, right there, you're feeling your breathing, and you center yourself. And I'll show you how to do this. And all sorts of thoughts, bam, starts intruding left and right. That's called excitement. And that's exactly what happens. Our mind, in case you haven't noticed, does not have the shut off button, right? I mean, always producing thoughts, right? Just like our lungs are always expanding, thank God, and contracting to allow ourselves to breathe. And likewise, our heart is always beating. Well, the mind always produces thoughts. Always. You can imagine, even when we're sleeping, it produces thoughts, right? It's always there. We cannot consciously shut it off. So the only choice we have is to familiarize ourselves with the content of it, what's in it, and then take a conscious decision to either engage with them, with those thoughts, if we need to do something at hand, or to letting them go, which is one of the pillars that I mentioned before. And the other obstacle is procrastination. Now, procrastination takes two forms. The first one is the one we all know, like, hey, I don't feel like doing this, so I'd rather get a cup of tea, and I'm going to get to this later. The other aspect of procrastination is low self-esteem. Sometimes procrastination feeds on low self-esteem, like, I don't feel up to this task, right? And that sense of not feeling up to that task, it's so painful that we find, or rather our mind finds, all sorts of excuses to run away from the task. I have to check my emails, I have to get that thing done, so on and so forth. And so all of a sudden, so many more important things get in the way of your meditation practice. This will absolutely happen. And just let me finish by saying that these obstacles, sleepiness, excitement, procrastination, are coded in the mindfulness protocol since it was coded by John Kabat-Zinn, as I said before, about 40 years ago. But you find these same exact obstacles even in the tradition where mindfulness takes its roots of Buddhism some 2,500 years ago. You actually find them coded verbally, exactly how they're spelled out right now: sleepiness, excitement, and procrastination, even in ancient text of that sort.
Claudia, I was going to ask, is it very individual then when somebody does meditation? Does it matter whether it's in the morning or lunchtime or evening? Is it just an individual thing?
Yeah, it's very much of an individual thing. People tend to suggest to do it in the morning because normally in the morning our mind is more quiet, but maybe it's not like that for each one of us. I love to do it in the morning. I actually wake up a little earlier before, the whole buzzing and of the work environment picks up, and I find some space in the morning. But I know a lot of people who do it in the evening, maybe before going to sleep. What's important, like I said before, is whenever it feels right for you, just make that space a little sacred space and make it grow, or even if it's just a minute.
Okay. So should we put theory into practice now then? And you will give us a guided meditation, please.
Sure. All right. So, okay. So if we could, that's a wonderful slide. So as I said, if you've never done this before, no problem. It's a guided meditation. And by the way, if you've never used those apps that Tracy mentioned, there's so many apps out there, you'll find guided meditations very similar to the one I'm going to be doing right now. So this one is going to last about 10 minutes or so. All right, so no need to sit in any particular place. I'm very happy if you're just sitting on a chair, which I assume most of us are probably sitting on a chair or sitting on a couch. If you have your own yoga practice, or you are in the conditions of sitting in a comfortable position on the floor, maybe on a meditation cushion, perfect. But that's not absolutely necessary. What is important, though, is that our posture is comfortable. And comfortable means to be sustainable without any distractions, possibly, or reducing all the distractions that could come from our body for the duration of the meditation. So if we're sitting, my suggestion is to keep your spine straight and your feet flat to the ground with your knees forming a 90-degree angle. And we take a couple of deep breaths. And if you naturally feel closing your eyes, that is fine. Let us take a few moments to just observe our natural breathing cycle. It's going to be different from all of us. How's my body breathing in this very moment? Our body has been breathing since the moment we were born, and that breathing cycle will be with us forever. And it wonderfully knows at which pace or depth it needs to breathe to sustain our life in this very moment. Let's take a few more moments, just appreciating how our body is breathing in this moment. Nothing to do except observing. All right. Now, very gently, let's scan a couple of areas of our body. And let's start from our feet. And bring your curiosity and attention to the touch sense of your feet as they touch the ground. For instance, the weight of your body as it presses down through your feet. Or perhaps the softness of the sole of your shoe, if you're wearing shoes. Or even the texture of your socks, if you're wearing socks. Just bring your attention there. Of course, your mind is going to wander off and chase any sort of distraction coming from your five senses or from your thought-producing mind. Maybe my voice is distracting. When that happens, just exert a little effort to revive your attention and curiosity to the touch feeling of your feet as they touch the ground. Okay. Now gently Move that attention away from your feet and slowly bring it to your spine, your spinal cord. And start from the bottom of your spine and just imagine walking up your attention from the bottom of your spine all the way to the bottom of your neck. Almost as if we're paying a visit to a trusted friend. All of those little vertebrae which have been sustaining the weight of our body every moment. And notice if there's any tension or any physical sensation there. Remember to keep a gentle attitude, almost as if we're paying a visit to a friend. There's nothing we're really looking for. We're not hunting. We're being open and curious to whatever is there. Let's take a few moments in silence. And little by little, move that attention to your shoulder area. Feel the muscles of your shoulders. Tensions due to stress tend to pile up right there. See what you notice. And if you notice any tension, maybe you can let it go a little bit. Dropping down your shoulders, maybe. And some of us may pick up some tensions that we cannot let go. Well, those are like a trusted friend that we need to be in company with during the meditation. The most we can do is acknowledge. All right. Now for a few more moments, sway your attention into your chest area. Your upper chest, your stomach. This is where our emotions take a physical space. And with kindness towards ourselves, let's see what we pick up there. Remember, don't be judgmental. Don't be, I'm feeling anxious. I'd rather feel different. Just notice any physical sensation you pick up in your chest and belly area. Sensations of softness, warmth, tingling, tensions. Stay on the touch sense. And every time your mind wanders off, remind your mind gently to come back to noticing those physical sensations with curiosity. Let's do that for about a minute. All right. Now, as we head towards the finishing part of this meditation, sway your attention to the physical sensations that are associated with your breathing at your nostrils. Don't try to control your breathing. It flows naturally, we've seen. We'll take the luxury for a couple of minutes just to watch the breathing as it unfolds. And to sharpen our attention, we'll focus our curiosity on the physical sensations the breathing generates at our nostrils. Can you notice the temperature difference between an inhale and exhale? Perhaps the tingling of your airflow in your nostrils or inside your nose or throat. And for the next minute, let's sit there, focus on those sensations in silence. Every time your mind gets distracted by a sound or any other distraction from your physical senses or a thought, just acknowledge it. Here's a thought. Don't get involved with it, and gently come back to observing your breathing. This is the mindfulness exercise. Stable on the breathing, noticing gently if our mind wanders off, and then bringing it back over and over. 1 minute, and then we'll conclude. All right, let us take 3 deep breaths. Let your mind wander wherever it wants to, and just accompany your deep breathing for a few moments with your full attention. Just feel all of that air flowing in, filling up your lungs, until that moment where the inhale naturally pauses and turns into an exhale. And then you let go of the air out. You can even pretend letting your tensions go. It's just a trick, nothing magic. Let's do it again. Air flows in. The inhale turns into an exhale. Air flows out. And then naturally it turns back into an exhale, an inhale, for the last time. And on the next out breath, we gently open our eyes. And let's take a few moments to just notice the shapes and colors around the room. Maybe the sounds, there's birds chirping around here. And we resolve ending the meditation by possibly savoring a little bit of the quiet, maybe, or anything we've experienced during this meditation, savoring it for the following minutes into the next activity you'll have to be doing as we finish this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention. Tracy, back to you.
Thanks, Claudio. I feel wonderful, so calm, really calm and lovely. I'm just wondering how everybody else is feeling after that, especially if it was the first time that they did it, because I know when I did, I felt a bit strange. But then I started, when we were doing them regularly through COVID, I really started to look forward to enjoy our 9 o'clock sessions. And I missed it when they kind of stopped and you had to go back to do real work.
Yeah.
But they were really, and so many people joining throughout the world, weren't they? Are there any questions for Claudio? I can't see any in the Q&A. Does anybody have any? And I'd like to raise their hand or mention. Oh, somebody's just saying thank you. Really needed that time out. Thank you both. Any more? Obviously, I've got some more questions for you, Claudio, if not. No, okay. So just, have you got any more tips for us, Claudio, about how to build our mindfulness practice? I mean, how long should we do it or how often?
Yeah, so how often is really important. Remember, one of the pillars was perseverance. So actually, how often is quite important. I would suggest daily. Now, as I said before, daily may sound difficult to implement in our busy routine. But like I said, the length is less important than how often we do it. So to answer your question, I'd say daily, but as I said before, with kindness and gentleness. Now, we're all driven to performance, and we're all driven by to-do lists and things to do. So it's healthy not to have a mindfulness practice end up in your to-do list, because then it'll naturally drive stress. So I think it's much easier to just embed it in your daily practice. That way you don't have to think about it anymore. Brushing your teeth is not in your daily to-do list. Or drinking your coffee is probably not in your to-do list, at least I hope so. But still you do it, right? With coffee, maybe a few times a day. With brushing your teeth, twice a day, or even more. Mindfulness practice should take the same space. So maybe you can find some time to do that. And to do that, as I said before, find that space beforehand. Brushing your teeth is something you naturally do, you know, in the morning when you wake up and in the evening before you go to sleep. It has its own place, and it has its own place since likely our parents told us to do so, and we never really gave it too much thought later on. It makes sense, right? So perhaps you can find the same space for your practice. So again, perseverance, so daily, but lots of kindness. If you don't have time, do it for a minute. Do it even for 30 seconds. Sometimes you don't have time, or sometimes you have time, but your mind is so busy with other things that there's no way you can do it. Well, in that moment, at least resolve to take 3 conscious deep breaths. It takes less time than brushing your teeth. You sit down, and if you cannot sit down, just stand there for a moment, close your eyes, and bring all of your attention to 3 breathing cycles, just like we did before.
We've got some comments coming in now. Thank you. Can meditation regulate the physiological and neurological aspect of individuals?
Yes, it does, and it can. There's so much literature. If you look it up on the internet, making sure you check the sources, there's a lot that can do. And those qualities that I mentioned before, the sleep cycle, stress levels, attention, those can measurably be checked. So yes, it does, absolutely. This boils down to the concept of neuroplasticity, right? This is something that we didn't know some 40 years ago, but through meditation, you can train your brain and your neural connections to do certain things better. And some of them are what I just mentioned, you know, the reaction to stress, resilience, and attention. So yes.
Okay, good. Somebody has made a comment, as soon as they think of breathing, their conscious mind takes over.
Well, that's it. Welcome to your mind. That's exactly what happens. As soon as you, it's one of the obstacles that I mentioned before. You see, that's overexcitement. You know, the mind starts thinking like, hey, wait a minute, why are you focusing on something else? Hey, I'm here, it's me, think of this. And it can get really pesty. You know, sometimes if you don't pay attention, just like a kid whom you've just given a toy to play and just, you know, please leave me alone for a moment. And then they keep on coming back. That's what mindfulness does. So kindness. Just keep on bringing it back. It's like flexing your muscles. So you need to flex your muscles to build them.
Okay. Somebody else is asking, are there any apps that you would recommend? I know I mentioned Headspace, but particularly for beginners, please.
Well, Headspace is very good for beginners as well. It has different phases. The other one is Calm. Calm is another very good app. Headspace has a free portion of it. You can actually get free stuff for a while, and then it requires a payment. There's another one, which is called Healthy Minds. It has lots of science behind it. It has Richard Davidson research team behind it. It's a researcher in mindfulness. So Healthy Minds. Another good one from, I forget his name, but it's called Unwinding Anxiety. It is a mindfulness app specifically for anxiety. And finally, there is another one which is free, and it's called Insight Timer. This one is almost like a community, and lots of people can pitch in offering mindfulness sessions. It is free, but since it is a community, you know, please check the sources, or please check if you really like the person who's giving the meditations, because you find everything in there.
Okay. Somebody else is asking, how can they improve their focus because they're making lots of mistakes?
Well, again, focus is one of the things that mindfulness improves, right? I mean, if you think about the practice we've done even now, it is all about focusing and focusing and focusing. And if you are making mistakes, or rather, if your mind is very much distracted, it's most likely because it has difficulties to stay focused in that moment. So my best answer is train that ability. So use mindfulness to train that ability. And I would also add, accompany that training with kindness towards yourself. Now, I don't know what happens after you've made a mistake, if you beat yourself up, or if you just bring kindness to yourself. But if I can bring in a suggestion here, train also that ability to be kind to yourself if you're making mistakes.
Okay, we've got a couple more. One is, are there any books that you can recommend? This person likes to read and would be interested. And another one is about, how do we influence companies for them to understand that mindfulness is really good for a person's well-being and productivity, etc.
Oh, love those. Yeah. All right. Books. There's lots of books out there. Be aware of what we call MEC mindfulness. There's a lot of stuff out there which is not necessarily that good. So as you search for through Amazon or whatever you like for the books, make sure you check the source and the quality of the writer. There are a series of books by Daniel Goleman. He actually puts mindfulness together with emotional intelligence. So Daniel Goleman, he's got a lot of nice books. And the other person is the founder of mindfulness, which is Jon Kabat-Zinn. The most popular book he put out is called Full Catastrophe of Living. Quite a horrendous title, but it is the basis of mindfulness. And he has written other books. So I'm suggesting two authors, Daniel Goleman and Jon Kabat-Zinn. As far as the companies, now in the company where I work, it's called Elsevier, we have a mindfulness practice, which we do all the time. And we have a group that takes care of not only mindfulness, but lots of other mental well-being things. So I agree with whoever has written the question. This is something that is very much needed, and not every company gets the importance of it, or maybe they just don't activate these things. What happened in our company is that we started this bottom up. So if you have the chance, build up a group, a meditation group or a mindfulness group or something, or bring in somebody who can give some lessons at the beginning, but start it from, bottom up. If the company doesn't pick it up from the top, from the beginning, if you start bottom up, then you build, enough critical mass, and then you'll be able to knock at the door of HR or whoever is doing that and say, hey, I have a few people here that are interested, and this is really benefiting us, and there's so much evidence, so on and so forth, that you can build a case for the company to pick it up. But I totally agree with you. It's so important, especially, through or after COVID, where, many of us have perhaps reconsidered, how things can change from one day to the next.
Right. As we're starting to finish up now, because I'm conscious of the time, could you summarize and give us some key takeaways, please?
Yeah, very quickly, I have four. Just remember what I said at the beginning. It's a practice, so it takes practice. Yeah, so don't fool yourself that it's a quick fix. Don't go and meditate tonight and feel, oh, wow, I feel so good, and then be happy with it and expect that that's going to bring the benefits that I listed. So practice, practice, practice. Remember, it's evidence-based. Although sometimes it may feel like, woo, you're sitting there meditating. Wow, it is evidence-based. There's so much science behind it. Be aware of MEC mindfulness, what I just said. There's a lot of popularized unscientific stuff out there. Check your sources. And finally, try it out. There's many apps, as I said, to engage, and just give it a go. And perseverance, remember.
Right. So thank you so much for being with us today, Claudio. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks everyone for joining in. We hope that you found it useful. Please complete the poll that Ben has issued. Please join some of our other activities, webinars throughout the year, and please have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.